to Confessions of an EOS Implementer, a podcast by Talent Harbor. We share unique stories of EOS implementers and the companies they've transformed to give you a rare glimpse into the successes and the challenges of the system in action. I'm your host, Ryan Hogan. Let's jump in. Hey, joining me on the show today, we've got Phil Cooper. This was an amazing conversation. Phil brought the energy and Phil brought the stories. Phil ran a pest control, family-owned pest control company for 30-some years. I think he said 34 years. 34 years, and he wound up selling to Terminix. And he walks us through his journey. He had self-implemented EOS, and he does a lot of reflecting now that he is a EOS implementer into the things that he would have done different and how the things that he didn't do cost him $6 to $18 million during the acquisition. It's an incredible story. We dive deep into processes. This is probably the first episode in which we really talk about processes and what good processes can do to tie in all the functions of the business and help you understand who's on first for what, and help you understand what are the things that you should actually be doing and actually be measuring to be able to move the business forward. It was a lesson for me. I hope it's a lesson for you. Love the process conversation. Love the stories. Love Phil. All right. Enjoy the show. All I want to talk about today is bugs. Like, that's it. Like, just bugs and pest control. But so here's where I want to start. It's either 6 or it's 18, but the number is big. What happened? You had said you left money on the table. What happened?
Well, what happened is there's a lot of pain for sure. When you leave $6 to $18 million on the freaking table and you realize that, look, when we sold, I didn't think I left $6 to $18 million on the table. I can promise you that was definitely not the case. I didn't realize, so we sell in 18 and it wasn't until probably August of 2020 to December of 2020 that I realized how much money we left on the table. And go.
Well, just now walk me through it. So it's a pest control business. It is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in your area.
Yeah.
And you had this successful outcome, but you discovered a couple years later that like things could have been better. So like looking back on it, what was going on?
So I'll give it to you in two passes. Let me just take you through it, in the real short version, and then you can dive in and ask me any question that you want to ask. So in 2015, we're scaling, we're going really strong, and we need to do something. And we get introduced to EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and I hear about it and we self-implement. And we do that for 3 years. And it works amazingly. And we really do great things. And we increase the value of the business to a point that Terminix courts us, offers us crazy amount of money, more than people have, what we call that. I won't say the words, but we'll give the initials, the FU number. You can put whatever letters you want, whatever words you want with the FU, but it's that money that you aren't supposed to get, and they give it to us. And we fast forward to that time frame of the late 2020. I've now become one of those EOS implementers, the person that I turned away back in 2015, and I learned what it would have been like had we had an implementer implementing EOS for us instead of self-implementing. And I can take you back to exactly the metrics and the things that wouldn't have happened. And that would have equated to $6 million to $18 million more in sale value when we sold in 18. And that's the short version. It just aches me. Oh my God.
We're definitely going to get into like, I smile and I laugh because like we went through this at Hunt to Killer, and it's almost like one of these things, like you don't know if you don't know, like you don't know what you don't know. And so we had self-implemented in 2016, 2017. And we went through this transformation. We're like, we have this incredible company. It's a well-oiled machine. And then we go out and we get a certified implementer. Actually, I think she's an expert implementer now. And she's like, you guys are doing this all wrong. And like, what was great is like the company went through a second transformation, but like, we didn't know, like we thought that we were a well-oiled machine because it was night and day to how we were operating. And so it sounds like you went through some of these revelations as well. So like, what things do you look at as a self-implementer that like you didn't quite get?
Well, let's say it this way. I'll go you there. I'll go to the cocky point. as leaders, sometimes we get a little cocky, it is right before we're going to sell. Well, before we get courted, probably like December or January. And I am really so proud of our self-implementation. I've got my chest out. I am like, and I go back to Hank O'Donnell, who's like one of the best implementers in the country. He was sitting in my backyard, the guy I turn away. And I say, hey, I want you to come in and I want you to watch a level 10 and tell me what you think. Like, I want you to tell us how great we're doing. And Hank says, yeah, we'll make the arrangements. Well, Hank never came in because now we sell the company. Thank God he didn't come in. Oh my God. If he had come in, it would have just been just a freaking nightmare, because he would have checked off all the boxes and told me all the things that we weren't doing, all the things that I thought I knew that I didn't know. And it's what you said, right? We think we know. We think we read traction and we know what Gino is saying. And no, it's the nuance. It's all the little things that go into this that matter. And, I thought I had it and I wasn't close to, I wouldn't say I wasn't close. We did pretty damn good, but 70%, but the 30% that we didn't have was where the magic was. The magic of EOS is really using all the tools the way Gino Wickman intended those tools to be, because it is, they all fit together. Everything has a reason. I can't break it, but you got to do it right. And we weren't doing it right. I can promise you that. I mean, were you doing it right?
Nope. Not at all. And that was but it was better than how we were. And I think that might be the trap right there, right? Like, I was in Vistage. I'm sure you were in some sort of Vistage.
I was in Vistage.
There it is.
That's where I heard it.
So you got your certified EOS implementer that does their rounds through your bi-monthly guest speaker, and then you read the book. You're like, aha, this is what I've been missing. You go and you implement, and you're like, it is what I was missing. But no, I think we had gotten the core values right. I don't think that we got our purpose or our niche right. I don't think we were focused enough on that. But we weren't measuring the right things in the business, and that became pretty evident. And we weren't doing a good job holding each other accountable to that.
Yeah.
What things specifically, looking back on it now, are you like, that was wrong?
Yeah. We didn't use the people component right. We thought we were using the people analyzer right. We thought we had the roles on the accountability chart right. But we were on the accountability chart, we were talking about what they did, not what they were responsible for. Big difference. I mean, we were thinking activity, and then we did the opposite on the scorecard. On the scorecard, we're talking about outcome when we're supposed to be looking at activity. The rinse and repeat. What do we do week in and week out to make this happen? Well, we weren't doing that. We were just looking at KPIs and things that we couldn't IDS, which is identify, discuss, and solve. We couldn't, in a weekly level 10, when we were missing a scorecard number, really, truly dig into the root cause, because it's super hard to IDS to an outcome. It's super easy to IDS to an activity to determine, is it the right activity? Is it the right amount of activity? Or is it execution? Are we not doing it right? But if you have, if you have the right activity at the right cadence, knowing, and the amount is right, and if you do it well, if that's true, the outcome should follow, right? I mean, it's so simple in concept, so obvious right now that I do this all the time. But it wasn't obvious then, because our scorecard stunk.
And were you able to have, thinking about the people analyzer, I think one of the hardest things about the people analyzer is not assessment's easy. We can look at somebody and their work and their productivity and try and figure out if their values align with our values. But having those candid conversations and actually making decisions based upon the people analyzer is one of the hardest parts. Were you hiring and firing based upon values and performance, or was it just an exercise?
We thought we were. Yeah. We convinced ourselves that we were, and we weren't. And I know if we were my client now, I would be looking at things and just calling them out on it. I wouldn't tell them that they were wrong, but I'd be just asking them some very fierce questions, and we would have been going like there was no, but we didn't have that. So we were able to justify, rationalize, talk away why we were doing what we were doing and why we allowed people to remain in their seats when they had no business being in their seats, either because they weren't truly a values match, or they didn't GWC, get it, want it, or have the capacity. And there were some costly decisions. We had people in those seats for 2+ years, which, had, massive implications and, led to those dollars.
And do you think that you were able to have vulnerability or vulnerable conversations at the senior leadership team level? And the reason I asked that is because like that was one of the you talked earlier about this like secret sauce or like the magic, and magic is in 20 to 30%. And for us, a lot of that was like finding an amazing implementer and having them help us to get comfortable being uncomfortable and saying things out loud. How do you feel that your vulnerability was as a leadership team?
We certainly didn't understand Patrick Lencioni's, pyramid of trust. He's stretching the imagination, or vulnerability-based trust. And if you go back to, Lencioni, which we all, if you do EOS, you know it extraordinarily well. It's that vulnerability-based trust, which leads to conflict, which leads to commitment, to accountability, to results. I mean, it's that chain reaction. Well, we never got taught that. We weren't doing that. And my brother and I there was vulnerability-based trust with my brother and I. That would be when we were screaming at each other in the room, and we always told a new leader, like when if somebody new came in the room, we would say, wait till you see Phil and Rick go at it, because you're going to think they're going to kill each other. And then a half hour later, it's as if nothing happened. That's vulnerability-based trust. We weren't afraid to say what was on our mind, to be open and honest and candid. And then when we decided on what we were doing, go in lockstep. So my brother and I had that. The rest of the team didn't. Some did, but not all. And you need all your team to have vulnerability-based trust, to say what's on their mind, to really say what they think, not to hold back. Because without that healthy conflict, you're not going to commit to anything. And then there is no accountability. And then you fail on your results, and then you lose $6 to $18 million.
Yep. And when you think about your brother and you, like that's an unfair, as they would say in the startup world, that's an unfair competitive advantage, or an unfair advantage, because you have had decades of a head start on building that relationship. How either when you look back on the pest control company, or if you look at what you do with your clients today, how do you kind of accelerate that timeline to get people comfortable in that vulnerable state?
I think it's the hardest one. It's the one that we work so hard as implementers to, it's facilitating in that room when somebody is quiet and not saying anything, getting them to come out, getting them to say what they think, poke the bear. If you want to say it in any other way, it doesn't have to wait till we get to the annual. In the world of EOS, we really dive into, what we call trust builders, or that team building, when we get to the first annual meeting. But that first annual meeting doesn't happen, necessarily, it can be, not 6 months after we start, or 9 months after we start, or a year after we start. So as implementers, it is our job to get everybody in that room to be open and honest. So you're doing little things, you're facilitating. It's the art of facilitation. The magic with a great implementer is the facilitation. It's the questions. It's the drawing things out. Is getting people to say things. Oh, and if you have somebody in the room that shuts other people down, it's having, it's either doing something to not let that happen in that room, or when that meeting, after that session, if it's a visionary, or one of the people in the room acting as an owner when owners aren't allowed in the room, making sure that doesn't happen again, making sure we understand the rules of the game, that owners don't belong in the room of a leadership team. We don't have that. It's no different than at Terminix. Owners didn't sit on, shareholders, really, large shareholders weren't in the room on the leadership team. The board of directors represented them, and they hired the CEO, and he hired his leadership team. It's no different.
When you think back to kind of pre-acquisition, were you guys hitting a ceiling? Like, were there things that were happening that you could identify in the business that, like, these are things that are preventing us from fully realizing or achieving, like, what we set out to achieve?
I would say in that case, I think fortunately for us, because I don't think we did hit the ceiling. I think I did personally a pretty good job of setting in place things that would help us scale, things that would, that we grew our leadership team. One of the things that attracted Terminix to us was the depth of our leadership team. The fact that I could walk away from the business for 2 months, ride my bike across the country and have it run by itself. So, we had a lot of wins along the way. This was why we got this crazy, this crazy stuff, this crazy amount of money. On the other hand, Ryan, what you have to think about is because we had all of that stuff and we weren't hitting the ceiling, what the potential was. And that's the part that, it's the fact that we weren't using the process component correctly. We didn't understand the cash flow drivers. We didn't have a great scorecard holding us truly accountable. It was nuanced. Like, again, I said, we were 70% of the way there. We probably, in this case, hadn't hit the ceiling. We're one of those rare companies that wasn't hitting the ceiling. We had figured out the things that were going to stop us. And we were, and when we think about hitting the ceiling, we always talk about 5 things. Have we simplified? Are we delegating? Are we predicting well? Are we systemizing, and do we have structure? So were we as simple as we needed to be? No, but we were always working towards that. But we were pretty complicated. So I don't think we were hitting that one. That could have had us hit the ceiling. We haven't yet, but we were working really hard to simplify. Were we delegating? Yeah, we were doing a really good job of that. So we were delegating and elevating. Definitely. We nailed that one. Were we predicting? Hell no. Our scorecards stunk. So we weren't predicting well. Were we systemizing? No, because we didn't do the process component. We thought we were. We thought SOPs were process. That's not what process is in the EOS world. And then did we have the right structure? Yeah, I think we hit that. I think we were doing fine on structure. Accountability chart, at least structurally, was fine. We might not have had the roles right. We may not have translated it back to the scorecard right, but structurally we had hiring triggers and we knew what we were looking for output and we had that one nailed. So we were doing a lot right. But so I wouldn't say that we were going to hit the ceiling, but gosh, go back to the very beginning of the thing, Ryan, like the 30%, 30%. If we just had that little bit more, if we knew what we were doing with that, the stuff that we didn't know, that's the stuff that makes the, whatever hair I have left on my head stand up.
What you just said something really interesting in there where you said SOP is not process, or not process in terms of how EOS thinks about process. So what is process?
In the world, Ben Berman, one of our great implementers, has done just an amazing deep dive on the process component. And, there was a book that came out on process, because process in EOS is different than process, what most people think about. It's the rinse and repeat way we do things. So it's linear and it's not a flow chart. And along the way, we also are identifying who's responsible for as we go along and how are we measuring it? Because what we want to know is, how does the company approach HR? How does the company approach IT? How does it approach ops? How does it approach marketing or sales? So when I look at HR, it's the easy one to think about. Think linear. We have to attract talent. We have to select talent. We have to onboard that talent. We have to motivate the talent and keep them happy and keep them moving forward. We have to, and then maybe, unfortunately, we have to terminate talent. Is it those are the steps, right? Last time I checked. And for most companies, that one rings true all the time because it doesn't change by company. But when we go to operations or sales or marketing, it is very different for every company. And figuring out what that linear steps are and then the little sub steps and keeping it really simple so that everybody that's in that thing understands it and they know where they fit in so it can be followed by everybody, or what we call followed by all, is great. And the way I also love to think about process in the world of EOS is supply chain. And come post-COVID, we all can understand this now. If our car broke down during COVID and we took it to the auto repair shop, maybe we got it back in 3 months because they couldn't get a gear or something, right? All of a sudden we couldn't get things because we couldn't get things. I had a client who's still having problems from supply chain because the manufacturer was backlogged for 9 months, or actually they were backlogged for 18 months. Can you imagine selling something and not being able to deliver it for 18 months? Are you freaking kidding me? But think about it. If you're in that HR example I had and we do a bad job selecting talent, do you think we probably will terminate more people? Oh, by the way, if we onboard talent, if we attract great talent and we select great talent, but we onboard them poorly, it doesn't affect it upstream, it affects it downstream. And that's what process is in EOS. It's all downstream. It's what is the cause? It's that linear approach. It's so very different. It makes so much sense. And everybody knows where they fit in. Oh, and by the way, because we're measuring it, it makes our scorecard better. because we know what we're supposed to do. It tells us the activities that we're supposed to do. All of a sudden, the activities, the really important activities, bubble up. So our scorecard gets better. Our understanding of the accountability chart, everything gets better when we do process right. It's the most powerful component, I think, that we have. Sometimes the most underutilized component, because everybody thinks they've done it, but they really haven't.
I'd never thought about it like that before. I loved how you just put that, where you can build the scorecard off of it. Because when you think about scorecard, like inputs, outputs, and generally people are looking at things that have already happened, and it's a look back. And you should be looking at the inputs, the things that like we can do that will affect these things downstream. And one of the things you just said is like, by building your process, you can identify them.
Yeah. Let me ask you, if you don't know what you do, how do you scale it? I love going to a marketing person and saying, so tell me, what makes you successful? What do you do day in and day out? And they go, I do stuff. I do a lot of stuff. I go, like, exactly what you do. They go, I don't know. Every day is different. I just react to the day and I move and bob and weave, and that's why it's magic here. And I go like, well, how do you delegate an elevator to that? How do you teach somebody else to do things that you have no idea what you do? Like, you can't scale that. And it all comes back to the process component. What do we do along the way to be successful in our business that makes us special, that makes us unique, that does the way we do it? And then just make sure that, we are doing it relentlessly over and over again, fiercely execute on it. And, the process component is all about scale. It's just, I can't say it enough. It is the one that when we nail it down is the magic of EOS. That is the one that probably, I'm going to say that was the biggest one that cost us. People cost us a lot. The scorecard costs us. The lack of the process component, the majority of that's, I think, the biggest part, because we would have identified some of those people problems. We would have identified some of the scorecard issues if we had nailed that process component down really tight the way we should have. Hank would never let that happen. Not a frickin' chance.
You're the first person that I've talked to that has said that. And that, like, it makes so much sense, right? Like, because usually when we're talking about the process, like we're always talking about the people, we're talking about the scorecard or the process, the system. Usually when we're talking about the system, there are other things inside of the framework that people acknowledge way more than process. I will tell you, we were one of those 2-year companies that was still trying to figure out our process. And so it's very interesting to hear you talk about how critical that component is, because if that's locked down, the other things will kind of fall into place.
Yeah. And, we wait on process usually very long. And there's a reason that we wait, because if you don't have the foundations of the other ones down, you screw the process component up, generally speaking. You have to understand at least a legitimately really good scorecard. You have to have the people component working well. You got to be using the people analyzer correctly. I mean, you've got to have a good accountability chart. These things need to be in place. If all that stuff is all mucked up, trying to teach the process component to them and get them to do it right is generally not going to go so well. Doesn't mean they can't find their way, but it's a little bit of a struggle. But if they've got the other stuff, it doesn't have to be perfect. But what happens is if you're really good at the other stuff, then the process component just makes it better. So that's probably, a little bit why why so many companies, some companies never, they say they, either they get to the process component with their implementer or, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong there. But the great EOS companies, they nail this one down. Their implementers nail it down. They nail it down. It is a beautiful thing.
At what point in the journey? So I'm a firm believer that there is no graduation. Like, having some sort of outside perspective and voice in the room, I think, is very important. And maybe that's just me as a visionary. Like, I need someone that doesn't necessarily have a vested interest that can tell us, like, hey, you guys are screwing up. At what point through an EOS journey, assuming that it's 2 years and you graduate, at what point do you really start harping on process?
I'm harping on process. I'm starting to really harp on at month 14 and really trying to press them to do it as it's got to be a rock. We're going to teach the component, and then, invariably what everybody wants to do is do all their core processes in 1 quarter, in one 90-day world. Like I can't stop them from doing anything. I can only try to, ask some questions and when they put that up on the board, like, I know what's going to happen because I know we're coming back at the end of the 90 days and it's going to be an incomplete rock, basically a not done rock, or they're going to have screwed up everything. I mean, I've never seen it work yet where they can get all their core processes done in a 90-day world. Oh, and get their other stuff done. I mean, I'm sure there's an implementer that has figured out the magic to make it happen and they can get their clients to do it in a 90-day world. And I haven't met that implementer yet, but when I do, that's a great day because then I can learn some new tricks and, then I won't be saying what I'm saying. But I usually, I want them to try one or two and I want them to nail it. And then the next 90 days go and replicate it and finish it off for the rest. So to me, it's a 6-month process to get it close. So if you back up from 2 years, if you don't start it at, if they are going to graduate at the 2-year mark, you're trying to get it started, somewheres at, 24 minus 6 would be, month 18, right? So between month 15 and month 18, somewheres in that neighborhood. Because if you don't, you're probably not getting to the finish line and they're never going to understand it. They'll graduate and will have learned the tool, but aren't using the tool. And to me, that's tragic. I've seen that happen. I wish I could tell you that every one of my graduated companies had nailed the process component, but they haven't. Not every single one.
And when you think about the process, one of the things that we did, we took on 4 or 5 processes at one time. And we said, this is your process. This is an HR process. It's a VP of people and culture. And it's your job to go develop that process. And you have a draft and present rock that's due in 90 days. We did that same for operations, same for marketing. It's interesting to hear you say 1 or 2, because I think what I'm kind of hearing you say is there's more than one voice or one idea that needs to go into a single process.
Look, an analogy we use a lot in EOS is the story of, you're going through the jungle and, we've got 2 teams and we're both in the sand. We got to go from point A to point B. And on your team has elected you to climb up the tree every 100 feet and make sure that we're going in a straight line. And on my team, nobody is going up the tree. And we've got our machetes and we're hacking away. And when you go up the tree, you see that they're slightly off track and you're bringing them back in, right? Because you can see down onto the forest. And we don't have a compass. We're just thinking, and we end up like a mile off to the left. And we're nowhere as close to the finish line. And you get there in neat, straight order, right? Well, when I think about process, I want outside eyes. The person who's creating the process is down on the floor of the forest. That's what they do every day. They don't see the different perspectives and look down on it from up high. It's no different than, when we want to get somebody above the company. It's when you fly on an airplane and you look at the geometrics out in Iowa and the farmland. Does it look the same as when you're in the cornfield? That's process component. That's why I want different eyes on it. I want people looking at it. What are the impacts? To me, when I'm doing process, because it's all kinds of people that are involved. By the way, in an HR process and talent, you've got compliance and you got talent acquisition. Does it affect everybody in the company? Yeah. So we don't want to involve them, huh? Yeah. Like, how crazy is that? And I bet you, every function in the company affects other functions. If accounting bills our clients wrong, do you think they're going to be upset? Yeah. Oh, and does that affect customer service and the delivery of service? No, it doesn't affect them at all. Yeah. Yeah. So we do need, and so I don't like to just give a silo and just say my preference is not to silo it. I'm going to have a champion of each one, but I want them to really work it. Again, keeping it simple. That's the whole thing. That's the other tricky part with process component is the inclination when people go to do the process component is to turn it into the SOP. That is what happens. And you have to bring them back. It's not. It's linear. It's simple. It's the way we do it, not how you do it. It's the way we do it. There may be SOPs that underlie it. There may be training that underlies it. There's all kinds of stuff that is underneath it. It's just keeping it simple. So,
and do you think that it is there a description? Is it like a headline? It's 8 things, it's 10 things, and then there's a brief description. And then where appropriate inside of that description, there is an independent SOP or there's somebody that's responsible for that kind of part of it. How do you see that?
Yeah. So what I love about with the way we teach this is that every company can do it different. Some companies may want to do it graphically. Some companies may want to do it in a Word document. Some companies may want to do it with a video. There's different ways of approaching the process component and getting to the same place. But the core rules are the same. We're going in linear steps. we're going to just show some very simple steps below it. We're going to figure out who's responsible for each step, because if the step breaks, who do we turn to? Who's accountable? And how are we measuring whether it's working or not? And if you can answer those simple things, your core process is nails. And that's rinse and repeat.
Do you think that, I know there's like service providers for process and other things. Do you think that this is something that's just intuitively internal to the company and needs to be crafted, ideated, refined from within?
Yeah, I do. Very much so. If you wanted to lift a core process from another company, I think it has to do with that. Because I also think it has to, and I'm talking out loud, maybe this is an aha moment for me, but culture has a lot to do with it also. How a company goes about doing its thing and the way they approach things. And it probably, when you really dive through it, I bet you if you start to look at the values of the company and you started asking yourself, is that in the core process? It probably is, because it's the approach and how a company, their DNA, the kind of people they have, changes the approach. Probably, I've never really thought of it that way as I'm talking out loud, but I bet you if I went back and looked, I bet you I could see values in the way they approach it in those core processes. And it would be a very interesting exercise, actually. But yeah, I think it's definitely within the company, 100%.
So when you think about what's interesting is what we've gotten to in this kind of reflection and looking back was it really came down to the process. So you guys had the vision, the niche, the values, you had all of these pieces. And it sounds like what could have used maybe a little bit more love was the process. Ultimately, this led to an acquisition. Like, how long were you working in the pest control business before the acquisition?
34 years.
Okay. So 34 years of your life is now culminating and it has meaning through a number. Like, what was it, one of those moments where you were like, this is what it, this is the journey, this is the dream, like this is it, or were there other emotions?
Well, first of all, we were not looking to sell our business. That was never in the picture. It was never in the plan. I mean, we had, it was legacy and building and continuing to build the value. And, this was not an expected moment. It was not contemplated. It was not expected. And it happened very fast. So yeah, I mean, if you're talking about, physically when the sale happened, what was the range of it, if you're talking about the range of emotions there, and massively wild all over the place. I can tell you we took, a hunk of money and gave it back to all the people that built the company for us because we built it on their backs. I wasn't going to, I couldn't look in, I wasn't going to be the guy who just, sold the company out from underneath them, and the other cool thing, which told me that we were doing a really good job with EOS, even though we were self-implementing. In our due diligence process, every one of our leadership team was involved in it. They knew the day that we signed the letter of intent, and they were all involved, and they didn't say a word leading up to the sale day. I mean, it was incredible that, and all my Vistage buddies, I told them what I was doing. They went like, are you out of your freaking mind? You can't tell anybody. Like, no. You are like, yeah. Have you not listened to anything we've told you in the last, 10 years of being in here? Like, you're like stupid. Like, this is going to go wrong. And when it didn't go wrong, they went back and went like, Bill, that's what makes you and your company so special. Like, you have this just incredible culture. And you said before, do we have vulnerability-based trust? Maybe we had it more than I'm going to give credit for, because, if we didn't, we probably could not have pulled that off. That, I knew that my leadership team wasn't going to say anything and that I could count on them to take us to the finish line. And so that was, that's a pretty wide range of emotions. And, and did I think I was going to retire? Yeah, I thought that too. And look at me now.
Did you ever consider anything? I guess like what was the goal? And I asked that because, if the goal was an outcome or building something huge, you could have went out and started acquiring other companies and created your own conglomerate. Like, what kind of pushed you over the edge with the sale versus either continue building, or like, if you're like, I want to build $1 billion company, then go on that path.
So, the goal that I had with Cooper Pest is the same goal that, I really have now, and that's impact. I mean, impact, what drives me is the success of others. I mean, I feed on that. If I can make, if I made our leadership team better, if I made them better individuals, both professionally and personally, it was the fuel to my fire. And I knew that if we, there's a great book, and I'll, rabbit hole this a little bit, a great book by a guy named Richard Haddon, which is Contented Cows Give Better Milk. And his sequel was Contented Cows Still Give Better Milk. And basically the premise is if you really invest in your people, customer experience, great customer service happens and profits happen. It's your people that make that happen, which is what EOS is, right? I mean, that's the premise of what Wickman says also. But that's what drove me. So the question is, if that's what was driving me, then why did I sell? Because I always said, and I was always coached, that you should always have a number on a piece of paper. Oh, and it's just not a number. It's what else do you want? Is there anything else that you want besides that money? That if somebody offers it to you, that you will not walk away under any circumstance. And when we were in the room with Terminex, we were in Philadelphia International Airport. We met them there, and I had advisors with me. I wasn't, and my brother, and they asked me the question. They said, "Do you have that number?" And I said, "Actually, I do," because I had coached my brother for years. We have to have this number. And I said, "But there's more than the number. There's other things that we want. I want to have a position where I'm reporting how I would love to be in a C-suite, but I know I'm not going to get to the C-suite of a $2 billion corporation at age, 55, and nobody's going to hire me to, we're big, but we're not that big." I said, "But I want to be in the room where it happens." And it's like watching Hamilton. And I wanted to be there. That was one of my dreams. And I gave that up when I went to the family business. And my brother wanted to change the way bed bugs were done nationwide because he's one of the top 3 experts in the world on bed bugs. He's renowned. He's brilliant. And there was a few other things that we wanted. And they said, "Well, why don't you and your brother go and write down everything on a piece of paper? And if you come back with the piece of paper and you turn it over and we say yes, will you sign a letter of intent?" Yeah, that's what you heard, like crickets. So I was like, and I looked at him, I said, "Well, yeah, we'll go do that because you're never going to agree to what we want. There's no way you're going to agree to what we want." And I knew what the multiples were out there, and I knew what my friends were selling for. And and so of course they said yes. And all, people will always go, "Well, so what your lesson was, Bill? You should have held out for more. What did you not get? Like, how much more could you?" And I said, "You know what I say to that, Ryan? I got what I wanted. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to squeeze them more. It was more than fair because they should never have given us what they gave us, but they wanted more than our client list. They wanted our culture. They wanted my brother. They wanted the book that I wrote. They wanted what we brought, and they wanted the way we approached EOS, and they wanted all those things, and that they were able to put a different kind of value on that. So I had to say yes. I mean, like, this was not in the cards. To say yes was not in the cards, but I always, again, I had learned, and it was a great discipline. You have that, you must know that number, because when that moment happens, it becomes if you can take it and make it objective instead of subjective, you can make the proper decision. But isn't that what EOS is? Isn't that what the scorecard does? Bringing objectivity to a very subjective business.
It's so powerful what you just said right there, because my inclination was the same as all of your buddies, which is like, well, if they said yes to it, then they were willing to pay more. And your response is like right on the nose. I got what I wanted. Like, it doesn't matter. And
I wasn't shopping the business. Yeah. And it wasn't just about money. I got the coolest position. I did get the position where I got to go to Memphis every month and report to the C-suite and do the monthly operating report and find out every reason why I never wanted to be in a corporation ever again. Like, oh my God, this is like, I really wanted this. Oh, and by the way, they gave me an MBA education over 18 months, 20 months when I was there for free. Oh, they paid me, I didn't go to school. I went to the school of Terminex, of being in a publicly traded corporation in a position that thousands of people in that organization went, and he leapfrogged over me for that position. Like, there was a ton of people that thought I was the coolest thing in the world, like 75%. And there was 25% that, who the heck does this guy think he is? Like, you can't just come into this company and do this. You haven't paid your dues. You haven't gone through the school of hard knocks. You haven't been through the corporate ladder. Who makes you think that you can do this? And it was, what an amazing experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It was the 20 coolest months of my life. I worked harder than I ever worked in my entire life.
Were you on an earn out for the?
No, that was the coolest part about it.
So you did this. Most people that get into that situation are just gone. But we had
Well, first of all, it was 90% upfront in cash. It shouldn't turn out the terms of the deal, but I'm not going to, but 90% upfront, 10% held back with a holdback that we could do with our eyes closed. Oh, and by the way, I wasn't running Cooper Pest. My team was running Cooper Pest, which is why they wanted us. I just, now Cooper Pest was still reporting into me, just as all the other business units that I was responsible for were reporting into me, and I held them accountable just the same way I did the others. But I knew we weren't going to have a problem getting there was not one penny deducted at that 6-month mark. So at 6 months, I could leave with 30 days notice because I was learning. It was because I got what I wanted. I got to be in the room where it happened. I was running all the companies that we had acquired around the country that we didn't change the brands on, that were $20 million in value or less, reported into my business unit. And it was my job to bring their value up and to make them strong because it was all over the place. And I flew 90,000 miles in like 7 months. I mean, all I was in the air, flying all over the country. I mean, I am telling you, Ryan, I was working my tail. I worked harder in those 20 months than ever in my career. I mean, I worked really hard in my career. I'm a hard worker. This was insane. But they gave me a gift that nobody was going to give me, that no amount of money would ever pick, that it wasn't about money.
Yeah. And did you, as you were flying out and they were acquiring businesses, were you using the same principles and EOS like things to implement?
Trying to, but I wasn't with, the companies long enough because I had 20. I mean, 20 is a lot. And they were all with all kinds of dysfunction. I was like, oh, and by the way, now I was in corporate America, so I couldn't just go make the change that I wanted to go make. But I learned the power of data. I would, the person I reported into, amazing guy, Dion Pearson, who I, still a mentor to this day. We would sit in the room, 2 days, 3 days before I would have to do my monthly operating report to the C-suite, the leadership team. And he would go, Bill, I would tell him what was going on. He goes, do you think that's what happened? Or is that what happened? I say, that's what happened. And he goes, well, how do you know that? I said, because I saw it, I know it, and this is what we have to do. Because as entrepreneurs, that's what we do, right? And he'd go, well, where's your data? I go, what are you talking about? He goes, let me see the numbers. What? And I would bring out a couple numbers and he'd go like, are you kidding me? You think when you go in that room, that's going to survive the test of those 10 people? You're going to get chewed up, dude. I don't think you should say that. Maybe you might want to say, you believe this to be the case. You believe it's wrong. I'm okay with that. But don't you dare say it's a fact when you have nothing to support it. And they drilled that into me, Ryan. I never had that at Cooper. If I thought something was, if my gut told me something, bam, we went. It's different running an entrepreneurial company. That's why in EOS, we run from, generally the sweet spot, 10 people to 250. We're not trying to build it for a $2 billion corporation. Terminix couldn't run on EOS. There's not a chance. Now, it works sometimes in 10,000 people companies, but at the same time, we do harp on data in EOS and we do talk about objectivity to, in the subjective world. And again, I told you that we did a really bad scorecard. Dion just drilled into me over those 20 months how important data is. And you know what? Even in an entrepreneurial world, data tells us all kinds of stories. So I take those lessons. It was like I said, the coolest 20 months I've ever had. Wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
How would you do it differently today? So knowing what you know now about data, like the biggest constraint, well, two biggest constraints. The biggest is always resources for a startup, I guess for any company, but generally a startup is resources. And so the access and ability to be able to get the data and then the time and everything else to be able to assess when you have to make a decision to stay alive or to continue moving forward. Are there things that you learned from a publicly traded company that you would actually say like, yes, like startups should slow down to move faster? Or do you say like, no, startups do need to use more of their gut to make decisions because the data's just not there?
It's my insistence on the data component, the great scorecard and individual measurables. And if you don't have the data, you can still get data. I mean, to me, data is all the inputs that you're getting. Data isn't just what's in a computer. So it's there if we want it. We just usually don't want it badly enough. We're not willing to, we always say in EOS, data takes time to measure. Measuring stuff takes time. But if you have it because you're making better decisions, it's worth the time invested. So the companies that I have that, have trouble with this, or, maybe their CRM stinks, or, their accountings, their QuickBooks is configured wrong, or they're getting, because they do. I mean, they're entrepreneurial. They have the greatest data sets in the world. First is, of the data, are they fluent in it? Like, I can't tell you how many leadership teams don't even have financial fluency. It's shocking, right? You would think that most people know how you figure out gross margin or gross profit. Or, if I spend $200, how much revenue do I need to generate to break even? Well, fascinating how many entrepreneurial companies can't answer that question. They go, isn't that what we go to the accountant for?
Everybody, in my view, especially if you're at the leadership team, should have some sort of baseline knowledge in accounting, or at least how the money flows through the company.
But they don't, do they?
No. Oh, well, and that's an issue.
Yeah, it sure is. So yeah. So I mean, do I think the things that I learned at Terminex are relevant in an entrepreneurial company? Absolutely, 100%. And I don't probably realize how much it resonates with me and how much different I am now from when we sold the business. It's very hard to tell, that spectrum where you've gone. But do I think the same way now as when we sold? When we went on the journey from 2015, when we started EOS, to when we sold in 18? No, definitely not. I am, definitely different. And then again, that goes back to me looking back and knowing what we probably would have done differently, right?
Yep. Phil, I don't want this conversation to end. We're at the hour mark, and I'm hoping that people are as entertained as I am. I knew this was going to be an amazing conversation. Maybe we make this. Maybe we make a part 2 on this, because I don't even feel like we haven't even got to like what you're doing today and the 3 different things that you've got going on, and your face paint and everything else.
Yeah, the craziness, right?
But Phil, if people enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, and they want to find you, like, where can someone find you to say, I want you as my implementer?
Well, so if you're not virtual, or you're not in the Baltimore, Washington area, you can talk to me, and I'll be more than happy to help first and get you to a great implementer. I'm always loving to talk business, but you would go out to, Phil. You can email me at phil.cooper@EOS Worldwide, or you go out to the EOS Worldwide site and you go Phil-Cooper, and my microsite will come up. And then, we didn't even go to the other stuff, but if I can tell you that if you're developing leaders and you have a service business and you want to know about frontline service managers, the managers that lead those people in the field, definitely call me, because I'll blow your minds with what's possible with those people. And that's all the stuff that we did at Cooper. That was our special sauce at Cooper that we're now giving to the world.
Well, you've gifted us with an hour, so the least that I can do and we can do is like, do tell us like what you're up to right now, because this is it's an incredible venture, and I'm excited about this as well.
We'll keep it brief, but what we know is that if you have pest control, I don't care if there's pest control or elevator maintenance or HVAC, we have people in the field, the people that deliver the service. And then they have a manager that is directly over top of them, what we would call a frontline service manager. And what the curiosity of me back at Cooper days was, where do we get this frontline manager from? And we get it from these people. And we grab that person, probably the best technician, and we say, Ryan, congratulations. We're now going to make you a service manager. Oh, and go watch, the other 2 managers, Mary and John, and figure it out. We'll give you a little bit of training, and maybe we'll send you to some online classes, or maybe we'll send you to a trade, some trade meetings, and you're responsible now for making your, 5 to 10 people great. God bless you. Good luck. And that's what we do over and over again. And you are not put into a winning position in any way, shape, or form. And what we've came to learn is it's because we give you education, but we don't apply it. So we learned we learned overall how you do this for all kinds of positions. But what we specifically did was come up with the activities, the cadence of what a frontline manager needs to do. And we know when they execute it well, what their outcomes are. So we team them up with a job coach. So they're going through education. They're taking that education, applying it in real time with their team, marrying it with the coach so they can build the muscle memory, so that we can measure 5 metrics to see if they are actually doing what we want them to do. And we do, like 5x to 20x return on investment on the training. And it is the impact that we're making, how we're taking frontline managers and transforming them in any service industry. Ryan, it is the freaking coolest thing in the entire world. And so that's it in a nutshell.
That's awesome. You're definitely coming back for part 2. We're going to continue this because I love the energy and I love the stories. And you're also in my backyard or hometown backyard, so that's awesome. But Phil, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it. And next time I'm in Baltimore, I'm hitting you up.
Thank you, bud. Awesome job, and go Birds.
Go Birds. Ravens or Eagles? We don't know.
Confessions of an EOS Implementer is brought to you by Talent Harbor. To find out more about Talent Harbor and our fractional services and talent search solutions for businesses that operate on EOS, visit talentharbor.com. And then make sure to search for EOS Implementer in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Talent Harbor, thanks for listening.